Hi, this is Dave. So today I did a session in a sensory deprivation tank, and this has been kind of a fulfillment of, I wouldn't say it was a lifelong goal or anything like that, but it's been something I've been interested in for the last 30 years. And that's kind of a long time, to eventually get around to doing something. But um, I first learned about a sensory deprivation tank when I watched Altered States, this goofball movie from the 80s. Some people panned it. I thought it was pretty cool. But basically, William Hurt uses a sensory deprivation tank to tap into some ancient parts of his brain, and then all kinds of crazy shit happens. And I thought it was a good movie, but really the takeaway for me was the notion of the sensory deprivation tank. And so I'm not entirely sure why, but over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's come back to me, this idea of a sensory deprivation tank. And so I found in my life that when something recurs like that over and over again, it's usually something I need to do or something to deal with. And I, I just follow that, and it's usually right more often than not, much more often than not. So, anyways, I called Wednesday or Thursday, set up an appointment, and went in today at 10:30. And I spoke with this woman in Santa Cruz, of course. Santa Cruz is the place where you would expect something that's kind of weird and out there to originate from. And she was great. Gave me an review of how it worked and had some ideas that I don't quite subscribe to, but you don't need to subscribe to those little out there ideas in order to get some value out of using a deprivation tank. So, for those of you who aren't aware of it, a sensory deprivation tank is built with the intent of isolating a person from the great majority of the sensory input that they receive, and it's done primarily through vision and sound. So, it's completely dark. It's sound insulated. There's not a whole lot of sound that gets through. Um, Smell, hearing, and touch still are in play. There's a little bit of an unoffensive odor in the tank, but it's primarily about sight and sound. So I learned today that there is this portion of our brain called the medulla oblongata, which is right here. Now, I've heard about that before. I was initially confused because I was thinking about that Police album, Zenyatta Mandata. But Zenyatta Mandata is completely different from the medulla oblongata, which is the brain part. And Sting or Stuart Copeland have nothing to do with that. Andy Summers is always the forgotten band member. I'll throw him in just so that he can get the due credit. So, in any case, the medulla oblongata, think of the medulla oblongata as kind of the dick of your brain, the jerk. And what this portion of your brain apparently does is steals all the sensory input and doesn't share any of it with the rest of your brain. So it just grabs all this stuff and processes it in a very conscious way. But there are other parts of our brain that apparently will eventually process these kinds of information, emotions and memories and experiences and facts and ideas and yada, yada, yada. And people can tap into those things through the experience of a session or multiple sessions or ongoing sessions with a float tank. For those of you who aren't familiar with actually how this thing is, it's about, the one that I was in was about 10 feet long, about 4 feet wide, 4 feet high, and inside is about a foot or so, 12 inches deep, of water that has been infused with Epsom salts. Now, today I learned that there were about 300 pounds of Epsom salts that were dissolved in this tank, which is mind blowing to me. So, you get into this thing and you float. Now, some literature will say you're weightless. You're not actually weightless. You're still experiencing gravity, but you do experience buoyancy. So, the idea is you're in kind of like, she used the womb, referred to the womb. It's a womb-like experience. Okay, I can't validate that. Don't really remember, but it was very cool. Water matched my body temperature and the whole thing. So I thought I'd tell you a couple aspects of the experience that I found pretty interesting. Um, First thing I should point out is that time passes very oddly inside of this. You have no reference point, so you can't check your iPhone, you can't look at a clock or anything like that. So it's kind of hard to tell how time passes. So there were a number of phases that I experienced, and here's the weird thing: there's a couple of them that I know happened, but I can't remember them. And the woman said that's because it involved another part of your brain, and that brain doesn't, that part doesn't usually imprint until you've done it a number of times, or if you write about it as soon as you get done. So I'm going to tell you about the parts that I do remember. But time passes very differently. There's one point when she's telling me about this, and she's talking about how she and her husband do floats that are, you know, up to 3 hours long. And she goes, and you come up to the abyss of time. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to approach anything that involves an abyss, much less the abyss of time, which is completely the wrong word picture for me. But that being the case, time is very strange. It just, like, I went in there initially for 60 minutes. I ended up doing 90 minutes. And when I was done, it felt like 20 or 30. If you would ask me, you know, how long were you in there? I'd be like, oh, and I didn't know. I'd say 20, 30 minutes. So crazy. So anyways, I'm in the tank. I'm there for however long. I don't know what it is. But I become aware of my breathing. And my breathing is very slow. It's not deep. I wasn't really holding my breath or anything like that. But it was just, and I think I was probably, you know, doing, I don't know, 20 breaths, 15 breaths a minute, in and out. It was very soothing, you know, just to be aware of it and to not think about it. Now, I should mention that there are, this little part of your brain wants control, and it doesn't really enjoy the fact that it's being deprived of input. So ideas and things come to mind, and you just kind of have to dismiss them. So I listened to a Police album. I'm sorry, I got Police on my, it's an Adam and Dada on my brain. I was listening to a Cheap Trick album this week, and there was a song. It was going through. It's not Dream Police. This song was going through my mind, and I had to tell it to go away. You can come back later, but these kinds of things happen where it's like you got to push these things away. So I think that's what I was spending the first however long. Spending my time just kind of clearing my brain a little bit. So I became aware of my breathing, and that was the first thing. And then I had my eyes closed, so I'm just kind of floating there. And you can have your hands beside your sides, right? I did a time where I had them laid across my chest, and then I had them where I kind of had them at my hips, resting on my hips, and then just floating. And so I'm laying there with my eyes closed, and I started to see lights. And when you read people's experiences about this is pretty common. It's not a laser show. It's not bright lights. Here's what happened to me. If you can imagine a big glass that's as, you know, big around as my, you know, like my torso here, and then imagine you're laying down, and this glass is up above you, and you can look up and you can see through the glass. Okay. Now imagine that there is like this kind of this milky white light, and it's not very bright. It's not a bright light. It's very dim, actually. And then somebody is using an eyedropper, and they're putting dark ink in the water, and that was what it looked like. And so these undulations of ink and the waviness of this black ink would hide and then reveal this amber white light. You know, it was not deep or anything. It was, you know, it wasn't an Andy Warhol painting or anything like that. It was just that was what it was. And so I did that for however long. Now that one didn't really bother me because sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I have those same kinds of lights. So it was something I was familiar with. The weirdest part happened next, or that's what I remember happening next. Whether it was actually this way or not, I can't tell you. But the weirdest part of it was I was laying there, and I'd been there, I think, for a fair amount of time, and I suddenly noticed that I was breathing more heavily, deeper breaths, and on exhale, I was making an audible noise like, and then I just started making audible noises as I'm breathing deeply and exhaling and inhaling, exhaling and inhaling. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before. It's pretty freaky, but there are recordings of Tibetan monks making this breathing sound, and it sounds abysmal. I mean, it's just freaky, but that was exactly the sound that I was making. And I will tell you that it's much different making it yourself than it is listening to it. It was actually a very satisfying experience, and it was hard for me to not try to jump into it and figure it out and control it. You know, it was like, oh, Dave, you're being a weirdo. You know, there's a part of me that was like, what if somebody hears you? You're a freak. You know, and I just had to put that away and not worry about it. And I did it. I don't know, man, maybe a minute, 2 minutes. I have no idea. But I got done. You know, just that phase finished, and I felt really great. I mean, it wasn't euphoric, but I just had this happy, joyful feeling. And again, it wasn't intense. It wasn't like an adrenaline-filled rush or anything like that. It was just this solid sense of happiness and joy, which was kind of weird. And then it just struck me what, you know, I'm feeling this way on the heels of making sounds of Tibetan monks, and I just started laughing. And it wasn't hilarity. I wasn't like, ah, but it was just more of this kind of like, ah, yeah, that was odd, and then that passed. And then there was another experience that I had that dealt with I'm not going to go into details because it's more personal than I want to share, but there was if you think back to the ink thing, right? What I saw was like this swirling, a little bit of swirling, but it was blue this time. It was ocean water. It was like water maybe 20 feet below the surface, and you know where there's enough light coming in, it's still blue, right? And I was looking at it from the side, like there's this cross section of this little black thing, and it looked like a kind of a sea angled up like this. And if you looked at it, you would have no idea what it was about. But I had this sense that it was about something that happened when I was young, and then I just had this feeling like, "Are you done with that?" And I was like, "I am. I don't need that anymore." And then that went away. You know, now I don't know what's going to happen as a result of that. I don't really understand it, but that was a part of it, and it was pretty cool. And then the latter part of it, there was more light stuff, and I think that lasted for a long time. Again, that was where I was the most relaxed, and there were. It seemed like that, I don't know, chapter or episode or portion of my whole float seemed to last a long time. It was just more light stuff, and it was kind of sometimes it almost had a feeling like if a picture in space, or you see some nebula, but that doesn't move around. This is dynamic, and it wasn't wah fast or anything like that. It was just it was kind of this casual ebb and flow and just kind of waviness kind of thing. And it was in the same amber light and dark and everything. So when your time is up, there's a little light off to the side on the left that it comes in dim, and then it gradually gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And so you just kind of open up the top, climb out, towel off, and you gotta take a shower because you got the salt over you. Now you don't have like salt crystals cascading off your body. I mean, it's not like that, but you can definitely feel it. And so you go and you shower up, wash your hair and everything, and you're done. And that was it. The thing that was cool was when I got out, the woman came in and she looked at it. She's like, "You look radiant," and I'm like, "I feel radiant." I'm exaggerating. I actually didn't feel that like pumped or anything like that. I was just like, "Yeah, I feel it." I feel really good. So the last part of it is pretty funny. When I got out, I just felt slow, just not sluggish or anything like that. It didn't feel dopey or kind of sleepy or anything like that, or any of the other dwarfs apparently. But I just felt slow, and so I told Tiny, you should probably drive. So we drive. We get at 17. I'm not a big fan of 17 anyways. Mostly, I love the twisties, but I don't like other people, and I'm sitting there in the passenger seat, and we're flying, man. We're just like, oh my God. And I yelled at Tiny twice. I'm like, you got to slow down. Tiny, you got to slow down. She's like, Dave, I'm going the same speed as anybody else. Just slow down. And then it took me a bit to realize that I was still slow from that experience, and it's just so casual, right? And then you get back into the normal thing of life, and it was kind of sad because during that trip, I just gradually felt that kind of cool slowness fade away, and I still feel kind of good. It's like 6:30 right now, and I did it at 11, and so there's still kind of like I feel pretty mellow, but that drive down 17 choked the life out of a lot of it, but um, I loved it. I'm totally gonna do it again. Really enjoyed it. I can see me doing it multiple times. It was just a great experience. If you can get past the weird stuff, and if you're okay with, if you can allow yourself to make Tibetan monk sounds or whatever else happens, um, it's cool. It's just a really neat experience. So that's that. I have had one experience, so I'm clearly an expert. So feel free to email me or write comments with questions or whatever, and I can get you an expert opinion. So there you have that. Hope you enjoyed it.